All right, we'll go ahead and get started.
All right, I'll just jump right in here, I guess. All right, well, welcome. My name is Scott Nelson. I'm a financial advisor with Legacy Financial Group here in Des Moines. But in addition to serving and advising financial clients for over 30 years, we have the pleasure of partnering with a lot of Iowa organizations like yourselves in delivering financial education programming, as well as doing one-on-one consultations for people as well. Today, it's my pleasure to join you today to discuss 6 ways to screw up retirement. As independent investment advisors, we take great pride in our freedom of thought and fiduciary duty to always work in our clients' best interest with confidentiality, also true independence and no product bias. As independent financial advisors, we don't sell any products or sell any funds. We work on a fee based on the financial advice and the service that we provide. Today's program is strictly educational. It's not specific individual financial or legal or tax advice. We always encourage people to consult with the appropriate professional regarding your individual circumstances. As we get into the conversation today, we're going to be covering a lot of conversation around retirement planning. It's one of life's really major events, and getting retirement right takes some planning. Many people make mistakes that can really have quite a significant impact in their financial future. Today, we're going to discuss some of the common ways that people screw up their retirement and what you can do to avoid making those same mistakes. Whether you're just getting serious about your financial future or whether you're on the cusp of retirement, we'll provide some insights and some practical tips to help you avoid the pitfalls that might ruin a retirement. When it comes to our financial lives, though, everybody has questions, okay? And everyone really has something in front of them that they're just not sure about. So we'll have some time today as well to have some Q&A at the end. Feel free to use the chat box on the platform today and just plug questions in as we go, and we can address all those at the end, or we can certainly unmute at the end too and ask some questions. We're going to cover a lot of stuff today. 45 minutes of program is not enough to cover everything. We'll definitely have some time for questions, but really hope that people come away with a couple of things that can help you in the future. If there is something, though, however, that you hope that we cover today and we didn't talk about it, certainly ask a question at the end, and or feel free to use me as a resource as well. Happy to chat one-on-one by phone or virtual as well. Just shoot me an email. I'm happy to address any questions. And again, just be a resource for everybody. If you've reached a point maybe in your life too that maybe you're looking for some more details or looking for a roadmap for your financial future, we can help with that also. The Iowa State Association of Counties has also done a pre-negotiated discounted rate for financial planning, which we'll discuss that towards the end of today's program as well. There's some additional resources that you all have as part of your organizations. Here is a list of them that, again, be sure to reach out to these specific financial institutions for specific advice regarding your retirement accounts and planning around those as well. You want to contact those firms directly as far as IPERS and Voya and Nationwide. But here's the contact information for those plans and resources for you folks as well. Well, as we jump into some of the mistakes that people make, the first mistake that we're going to talk today about is underestimating your retirement spending. Okay, that's a big mistake that people make when it looks at retirement. It's how much are you really going to spend in retirement? You know, when you look at your net versus your gross, we got to consider a lot of different things. We've got to consider taxes. We've also got to consider, you know, when we're looking at utilizing the savings that we've spent a lifetime accumulating, what's really appropriate and are we planning that efficiently as far as our spending? Because some folks, you know, have, you know, used the budget all their lives, and some people just start off with a budget early on in their in their careers and then set up a nice, healthy structure where they didn't have to worry about budgeting. Because they had a nice structure in place where they saved first and had marginal lives and spent what's left. And so now they got to a point where we need to making a transition life. It's good to start looking at that budget again when we're making any big changes in our financial life, like retirement. So with that, really doing another budget is very helpful, because there's a difference between a theory of what you think you're going to spend and what you actually spend. And also looking at some of the things that change. There's a lot of changes when it comes to getting ready for retirement, and looking at what are some of the anticipated spending changes that happen. A lot of times we're in a position where now hopefully we've got, if we've got kids, hopefully they're adult kids that are now self-sufficient, right? And if so, people that have kids know that kids are expensive, right? And so there may be a lot of resources that are now available for you, for your financial future versus your kids. Or maybe we had a mortgage that we've got paid off and that's freed up some cash flow. Maybe we're out of debt finally, right? As we are approaching retirement. And so cash flow, we need to look at our spending quite a bit differently. And also a simple practice too of just practicing being retired, right? Just practicing living on a retirement budget. If you think you're going to need X in retirement, or if you've done some, done some budgeting and know that we're going to live off X, let's try that, right? Let's try that for 3 to 6 months or so and stick to a budget, so that way you can roll into retirement with confidence. When we look at some of the changes that happen in spending as we're transitioning through the latter half of our life, a lot of spending for most people, average households, happens, in our mid to late 40s and early 50s. And then from there, things start kind of declining a little bit, mainly again, because hopefully we've got a lot of the debt out of our lives. We've got mortgages paid off. Kids are self-sufficient. And so spending can decrease as we look into the future. But when we look into the future too, part of that is planning, is trying to understand what our spending might actually look like, and looking at it appropriately and efficiently as well to have a fulfilling retirement as well. We look at kind of chunks of years in retirement, kind of more the active phase, hopefully for most folks, early on in their retirement or pre-retirement, depending on when you retire. It's that go-go phase. That's where maybe our spending doesn't drop, because now we're spending on travel, right? And enjoying retirement, doing the things we can be doing while we have hopefully the health and energy to be out physically enjoying retirement. Then we get into another phase, the next phase, which a lot of times, again, you see a decrease in spending. It's kind of that slow go phase, they call it, where we start slowing down a little bit. And maybe you can kind of think about, depending on how old your parents are or your grandparents are, or maybe people that are kind of in the latter half of their 70s or early 80s, they're starting to slow down a little bit. And so a lot of times spending slows down a little bit. And then you reach kind of the final phase of our life, and that's kind of that no-go phase where, we're just not doing a whole lot. We're not traveling very far anymore, if at all. And so our spending is decreased quite a bit at that point. However, the difference could be is our healthcare, right? Depending on what our healthcare situation is, our spending could actually jump back up when we're looking at possible healthcare challenges and or long-term care. So again, it's prudent to be looking into the future for around our spending. It's a big mistake when people just assume that there's a lot of information out there that says, oh, you only need 70% of what your spending is today when you go into retirement. Well, that's just simply not true. Everybody's situation is different. It's prudent to be looking to the future about what might be best for yourselves. The second mistake that a lot of people make is failure to plan. Paint yourself in a corner, so to speak, right? Not having a plan. Some people do. They just don't have a plan at all. And And, so if you don't have a plan, maybe the plan is, well, I'll just keep working, right? I don't have a plan in place, so I'll just keep working. That's my plan, right? I'll just keep working and everything will be fine. Well, it depends on what your expectations are and the ability to work as well. Things change, right? And there's a lot of statistics and the numbers out there on averages too. You can kind of see some people plan to work, right? You can kind of see here that a lot of people, the expectation is that people, to retire at age 65 or older, that's 70% of people expect to do that. However, actually, most people retire around 62 because sometimes it's healthcare or health problems, right? Or maybe there's something changing in the organization or a spouse's organization. They're downsizing, right? Or maybe having to care for a spouse or family member. There's a lot of reasons that people, when they plan to work longer, that just doesn't always happen, okay? So we've got to have a plan in place. You just can't say, I'll just keep on working. Well, maybe that's not going to be an option. So you've got to plan. It's a mistake that people make is they don't plan to not have work in their future, right? And part of that is looking into the future. There's a real need and there's a value of looking into the future when it comes to our financial lives. Where is your current path that you're on? Where is that leading you? Where's that trajectory leading you? If you haven't done planning before, it's a great practice to do to understand with some more clarity about, where you projected, at what stage do you have enough, at what point have you accumulated enough resources to replace your current income needs, or calculating how much you need to retire. What's that number you need to retire? When will you run out of money, right? When you have that amount that you feel you need for retirement, how long does that last? How much do you need really to save to live a long retirement without worry of running out of money? Because a retirement where we're worried about running out of money that's no retirement. That's not fun at all. So we really got to look into the future and do some planning and look at the value for that. Creating a roadmap, right? Creating a roadmap to your financial future that helps you clearly define where you're going, but also making that pivot into retirement and then defining what the distribution of that looks like. And that also helps you identify strategies that you can use to improve the trajectory of your financial future. For those with maybe a little bit of time or a fair amount of time still in their accumulation phase, as we're looking for the retirement sign on our financial future, when it comes to building assets in that accumulation phase, again, if we're possibly at a point in our financial lives where we've got maybe we're debt free or majority of our debt's paid down, or maybe we've paid off the mortgage, or again, maybe we're empty nesters and kids are now self-sufficient. A lot of times that pre-retirement phase, we've got a lot more disposable income and a lot more cash flow than we did early in our careers when we were starting a family and getting into a home and having debt and that type of stuff. So looking at utilizing the power of compound interest to really maximize those last that last chunk of time that you're in the accumulation phase. There's a calculator, you can use this QR code to take you out to a calculator and plug in some numbers so you can see for yourself the impact of how much huge difference just saving a little bit more each year will make. In this scenario here, I was looking at somebody that is, say, 55, and we've got 10 more years of working to 65. So we've got 10 years to go. We're starting, say we got a salary of 80,000 and we got a currently we've saved 150,000. Maybe we feel like we're a little bit behind in that. Will saving a little bit more each year make an impact? And what I'm looking at here is just saving 2% more each year, right? So we're looking at our salary increasing 3% and our contributions right now at 10%, and we're going to increase that 2% this year. So it'll be 12%, the next year 14, then 16, then 18, and 20, and so on until we're up to 30%. So again, we're at a phase now where we've got more cash flow because we've spent down, we've got rid of debt, we've paid that off, kids are self-sufficient. Doesn't make a difference, right? It makes a huge difference. Even, and again, 2%, that's 2 pennies of every dollar, right? Because 2% of a dollar is 2 pennies, right? So 2 pennies of every dollar that you make, can you save just 2 pennies more each year? Does it make a big difference? Yeah, it makes a substantial difference. We're talking about $100,000 difference. So that's compound interest if we've got some time left to really capitalize on. But then as we're looking forward to retirement too, we got to look at where will that retirement income come from? So we've got a couple of different pieces of that puzzle, so to speak. And I've seen thousands of different financial plans. And while there's certainly similarities to people's retirement plans, no two are identical. Everybody has their own specific details that are unique to their lives, right? When we look at Social Security is only designed to replace about 40% of somebody's income. So then you look at, well, if we've got a pension like IPERS, okay, well, that's a piece of it. And it's a substantial piece for a lot of folks. But some people, maybe a spouse doesn't have the IPERS program, right? So, and looking at this also from a family perspective, not only your own, but also your spouse, and how does all work together? So we've got Social Security, maybe we've got a pension. We've got, some retirement plans, deferred type of plans, or personal savings, IRAs. So how does this all work together? And we've got to look at where that comes from. We also need to look at, when we're Social Security for sake of discussion, what's a good timing of that? Do you claim Social Security right away, or do you wait and delay those benefits and let that benefit grow a little bit? Again, everybody's situation is so different. Just because a coworker or maybe a brother-in-law or sister-in-law, what they did doesn't mean it's exactly right for you. It's important to look at your specific individual situation. Some of the basic strategies that we generally look at is if we've got a difference in age, right? If somebody in a relationship, if somebody is older, 5 or 10 years than their spouse, well, there's a different strategy there. Sometimes we look at the income. If somebody has, in a relationship, if we have a slightly different income or wages that were earned, then our Social Security payment is substantially different. So a lot of times it's claiming the lesser payment earlier and delaying the larger payment later on because of the spousal benefit. Whereas if the lower Social Security spouse, if they precede the other spouse in death, then the higher income Social Security, they keep theirs, obviously. And if the higher Social Security earner precedes the other one in death, then the other spouse gets their benefit. So there's lots of different things you need to look at. And really, that's, again, part of the value of running projections and looking and putting all these pieces together so you can kind of see what the best strategy is for each person's situation. Again, everybody's is so much different. Then as we're looking at, again, moving from the accumulation phase to looking at how do we build our paycheck, right, and all the different sources, and looking at the distribution phase. The distribution phase is just as critical as the savings phase. But there's very little information out there on how to do this part of it well. So really take some time to look at, again, how long will your savings last? Again, another QR code here you can hover over with your camera on your smartphone, and it'll bring you out to a website, and you can plug in data points for yourself to say, hey, I've got this amount of income or this amount of assets, and how long is that going to last? So you can, again, look into the future with a little bit more data. Another mistake that people make is not creating an investment strategy for retirement, because our retirement investment strategy, it's not the same. It's absolutely not the same as our accumulation investment strategy. They're absolutely different. We use dollar cost averaging, right? When we're accumulating, and that is, each paycheck that we get, maybe we have a percentage go to our retirement fund, right? Our retirement account. And so as the markets go up and down, you kind of get an average because a lot of times you're buying when the market's low or you're buying when it's high, and so you're not really timing when you're buying, you're just buying every paycheck. So it's dollar cost averaging. On the opposite side of that is dollar cost ravaging, right? Which is the timing risk of withdrawals. And when you retire, especially at a point, and the market always does this, it goes up and down. But the most recent market high was January of 2022. It was a market high. And so we go into retirement, or maybe people right before COVID, right? The market dropped. Or before the financial crisis, the market dropped. So we've got a period where we're going into retirement and the market drops on us and our portfolio drops substantially, and we're taking distributions out when we really need to be letting our portfolio recover. And so we really need to look at a greater diversification and look at investments that use different types of strategies than, again, because the accumulation phase is theoretically pretty easy, right? You just save more. You just put in what you can every paycheck and just keep investing and keep yourself exposed to some risk for that upside. But on the distribution side, we definitely need to look at things differently. You need to, well, how do you invest differently then? Well, you need to look at, common way to think of things is kind of different buckets, right? Is set up a portfolio that is able to weather the next financial storm and multiple financial storms, right? Look at alternative investings like defined outcome type of funds, which, we typically have our equity and our bond portfolios. That's kind of the generality that pretty much everybody's familiar with, which, and a lot of times going into retirement, a 60-40 portfolio, a lot of people hear that, 60% equities, 40% fixed income or bonds, right? Well, we need to do more than just that, right? We've got to look at having a strategy that says, hey, let's have, a good amount of our income in this bucket for the long term, that has more equities in it, right? And it has some bonds and some maybe defined outcome type of investments. And then we have our middle buckets. This bucket here, that has our long time frame. This is money, again, has a long time frame. Say we retire at 65. Well, hopefully you're going to have a 20 or 30 year retirement. You're going to need your money to last 20 or 30 years. So when we go from accumulating to distributing in retirement, it's not like we need our whole investment account the day we retire needs to be all cash. No, we need to invest for a very long time frame, hopefully. So you need to have one bucket that's more equity exposure for, again, a 10 and 20 plus year time frame. Then we have a middle bucket that is a little less risk, that has a more intermediate time frame of, say, 5 to 10 years. And then beyond that, we have our short term, 1 to 5 years. Now, this bucket here needs to be conservative, right? It needs to be cash equivalents, and short-term bonds, because we can't have volatility in the amount of money that we're taking out, right? Again, when the market's volatile, we need our equities to be able to have time to recover. So we need to be in the safest place to be invested in the market is not be invested in the market, right? Is to not be in the market with at least 3 years or maybe 4 or 5 years, be 3 to 5 years ahead of ourselves and our income needs. So if we retire at the top of, the next market downturn, well, as long as we're allocated properly and have a handful of years, say 3 to 4 or 5 years ahead of ourselves, we can ride through that market downturn. A market go down for a year or 2 or 3 or 4 and be fine. We can let our equities recover, right? So again, having a different strategy to invest differently as we're in retirement. Because looking at this from a historical perspective of the markets, and here's the S&P 500, right, which is 500 publicly traded companies. You look at what you see here is, again, the market goes down, but it's never gone down and not recovered, right? It's always recovered, and then it's gone on to make new highs, right? Here's a financial crisis, 2007, 2008. It's a bear market. A bear market means the market drops 20% from its high, okay? So we enter in a bear market, but give it a little bit of time and the market goes up, right? It recovers from where it was, and then it goes on to make new highs. Bull market is 20% off the bottom. You're entering in a bull market, okay? But again, what we see is the market has always recovered and make new highs, but it never just keeps going up, does it? It goes down. We'll see lots of market corrections in our lifetime. The key is to be prepared, again, to have, a couple years, 2, 3, 4, 5 years, not in the market, to be able to ride through, right? To bridge a gap between the market downturns, right? That's how we need to be looking at and thinking about investing differently in retirement. But we also you can't not be invested either. I mean, so say the market drops, you just go all to cash. Well, your portfolio, you just keep driving that down, and that's a great way to run out of money, right? You've got to be exposed to the market to have the potential for the upside. Because again, in the distribution phase, doing it wrong is a big mistake, right? Doing it wrong could be absolutely very costly. Again, but there's a lot of education, a lot of information. Everybody knows they should save more, right? And lots of tools and lots of information on how to save, but very little out there on how to efficiently tap assets in retirement. And also not paying attention to the withdrawal options that we have from different accounts, and the tax implications can be very costly mistakes in retirement. Well, what about annuity, right? Well, let's just do an annuity and then not have to worry about the market, right? Well, that's one strategy. A lot of people already have annuities. Annuity is you're making payments into something to give you income. That's Medicare, right? Or, I'm sorry, Social Security. Social Security is like an annuity. We're all paying into Social Security, and then we get a string of income. So we already have. Everybody has Social Security as an annuity, and then a lot of folks have IPERS, right? IPERS is a pension, kind of like annuity. You've made payments throughout your working career, and then it's a string of income. So we've got 2 annuities already. How many more do we need, right? In annuities, there are certain circumstances where annuities are good. It really depends. It's not a blanket, just do an annuity and everything's fine. Well, they're a very unique role in funding one's retirement. They're not for everybody, and there's lots of different types of annuities that are out there. Some short-term fixed income or fixed annuities are very efficient for short-term distribution. But again, things change. I mean, our spending levels change every couple of years, so we want to be able to make changes versus locking ourselves in. You want to read the fine print on annuities as well. There's lots of terms and fees, a lot of fees and lots of riders and understanding the taxes, but really just doing the math, right? Let's just do the math on the annuity. Make sure you understand the math in the annuity to see if it's a good deal. A lot of times we hear, oh, it's a 5% return. Well, it's not a 5% return. What they're talking about majority of the time is a 5% withdrawal rate. A withdrawal rate is absolutely different than a rate of return. If we look at giving an annuity company $100,000 and they give us a 5% withdrawal rate, not return, 5% withdrawal rate, that's $5,000 a year, right? You get $5,000 a year back from that $100,000. Okay, so how long does it take you to get your money back? 20 years. It takes 20 years to get your money back at 5%. So beyond those 20 years, now you start making an internal rate of return. The first 20 years, you're just getting your principal back. Now you're making a rate of return beyond that. So again, understand the math, do the math, and make sure, figure out if who's it a good deal for? Is it a good deal for you or for the insurance company, right? So Again, be cautious around annuities, but there are absolutely a place for annuities depending on the situation. Okay. Another mistake that a lot of people make is omitting a pay raise in retirement, right? And that's inflation, right? We're hearing a lot about inflation the last couple of years, but if you think about it, before, 2 years ago or so, did you really hear much about inflation? We hear it all the time now, but no, I mean, but there absolutely has been inflation. It's when inflation is lower, it still can erode around our retirement success. So you've got to plan on giving yourself a pay raise every year in retirement, giving yourself a take-home pay raise every year in retirement, because every year in retirement, we're going to have inflation. We also need to figure taxes into that as too. A lot of times over the long run, taxes go up. So we got to plan for both of those. It's a big mistake that people make is that they don't properly figure in inflation and taxes into the retirement. Because one of the concerns people have naturally, right, is running out of money in retirement. If you look at inflation of 3%, the average over 65 Iowa household spends about $57,000 per year in retirement. Okay. In 20 years with 3% inflation, that's almost $100,000. So if we retire today and think we're going to need $57,000 for the rest of our life, nope, we're running out of money. Okay. Or you're substantially reducing what you're going to be spending in retirement. Your money's going to go half as far as it does 20 years from now. And I think I would probably agree, most people probably plan on being here in 20 years, right? So give it 30 years, even longer retirement, $134,000 is the equivalent of today's $57,000. We've got to pay attention to inflation. You got to have a plan to combat inflation, right? And the best way to combat inflation is kind of like we talked about, is being invested. Because things absolutely cost substantially more. There's a lot of stuff that's cheaper, like technology, right? Like TVs and cell phones, and some of that stuff has absolutely gotten cheaper. It's a lot cheaper. Remember when we used to pay like per minute, or pay per text? There was a fee if you went over. That's all gone, right? I mean, so services, cell phone services have gone down. A lot of technology gotten cheaper, but a lot of the essentials like medical care has gone up substantially. Hospital services have gone up 200%, right, in the last 20 years, about 10% a year, right? That way outpaces average inflation. So how do you combat inflation? You've got to be able to be invested, kind of like we talked about, but you've got to have a different strategy. We've got to have a bulk of our assets invested properly to combat inflation. But we've got to have some assets that are in the risk-free side of the world, so we can mitigate market cycles. Because when we look at inflation, not everything goes up with inflation, right? Social Security is supposed to go up with inflation. Again, it's only 40%. It's only designed to be 40% of our retirement income. But you can see here, cost of living adjustments, since 1975, have gone up. Last year, again, with inflation, right? Last year, Social Security went up 8.7%. The year before, almost 6%, because again, we were in a high inflation environment. So Social Security is currently designed to go up with cost of living adjustments. However, Social Security, not a lot of people are very confident that our current Social Security situation is going to be able to keep up. So things absolutely need to change with Social Security. Social Security should absolutely be around for everybody, but they need to make some changes and tweaks. I'm not sure if the cost of living adjustment will be part of that change or not, but right now, Social Security does go up with inflation. That may be a change that is made in the future. So again, but Social Security is just part of it. IPERS, right? Again, IPERS, if you've got the IPERS pension benefit, that's a great benefit. It's an outstanding benefit. However, there's no cost of living adjustments with IPERS, right? You look at your IPERS, it's this, when you claim IPERS at X amount, it's that it doesn't go up. It doesn't go up as inflation goes up. So we've got to have a distribution plan again that that looks at including, you've got to include inflation in your distribution plan. I've seen very few retirement plan calculators that include inflation. Okay. And so that you're missing the mark substantially if you're not including inflation and taxes. Again, here's a QR code you can use to run some projections for yourself there as well. Taxes, tax law changes, right? We need to include taxes in our future and have a little better understanding around taxes. Because the one thing that's consistent, obviously, is change, right? And the tax laws are constantly changing, it seems like. Tax law also seems like it's written in pencil. I mean, it's written and then they change it, right? Erase it and put something else in there. You know, you can think about RMDs, required minimum distributions from pre-tax retirement plans, right? If you're getting close to retirement and you have a IRA or a retirement plan, you probably know what an RMD is or heard of it. It used to be 70 and a half. Then they changed it to 72. Now it's 73. But people that retire in 2033, it's going to be 75. So things are changing, right? Also, the Job and Tax Cut Act of 2017, it lowered our middle brackets. We used to have a 15%, 25, and 28% brackets. If you guys remember that, in 2017, that was the brackets. Okay. The Job and Tax Cut Act lowered the middle brackets by 3 to 4%. It's a temporary change. It's set to expire at the end of 2025. So as the tax law is written right now, in 2025, right, in 2025, our tax brackets are going up, right? In 2026. In 2026, our tax brackets are going up. Also, there's changes to the state of Iowa, right? The state of Iowa, from an earned income wages perspective, we're moving over a couple of years to a flat tax of 3.9, which is good, which is great. And also the retirement income, last year, retirement income was subject to income taxes. This year, they're not. Moving forward, that's the way the law is written. Is that indefinite forever? It's for the foreseeable future until something changes. Which nothing's set in stone forever, but that's the way the law is currently, which is a great change for our state taxes, but that could change, right? So we got to keep up on the tax changes. And again, that's part of tax planning. That's looking into the future. Tax preparation is what we do every spring. We look in the rearview mirror and look at what happened. We want to look in the future where we're going to be a little more efficient. You don't pay taxes just once a year either, right? We pay them every year. So if we're looking for maybe we got 10 years more of our working career, we're paying taxes for the next 10 years at our earned income rates, right? And then we go and switch in retirement. Hopefully you've got a long retirement, but you're going to be taxed every year in retirement as well. We've got to look at tax a little bit because it seems like there's kind of two different tax systems out there. There's one tax system out there for the people that are informed, right? The people that take time and reach out to resources and get help with understanding their tax situation. That's one system. The other system people are in is the system they just let taxes just simply happen, right? And that's a good way to get killed in taxes over your lifetime, okay? Because when you look at your lifetime tax bill, here's a situation here where we've got somebody that's working for another 15 years, right? Federal, state, FICA tax, and that's in the scenario, we're earning $60,000. We got 15 years to work. We're going to have $1.1 million of wages that's going to get taxed, $279,000 of taxes. That's not nothing, right? It's not nothing. Switch over to retirement. Taxes don't go away, right? Somebody has a $50,000 retirement taxable income for 25 years, $1.8 million. Great, but it's taxed, right? We don't have state taxes. We're looking at federal, we don't have FICA, but we're still $218,000. So add those two up, you got 15 years to work and you got 25 years, you got 40 years ahead of yourself. In this scenario, right? We're looking at $500,000 in taxes. Don't let taxes just simply happen, okay? take some time, encourage people to reach out to their tax professional, financial professional, and understand taxes a little bit more. Okay, again, big mistake people make, and a good way to get killed in taxes. Looking at paying taxes when they're the cheapest is another thing too. Again, understand the taxes a little bit, because again, here we're retired, right? Here's our income. We should be deferring towards the last part of our career more than likely, because our wages are probably the highest they've been towards the end of our career. But then what happens when we retire? They go to zero, right? And then we build in maybe IPERS or a pension, right? Then we have some Social Security tax on top of that. And then we can go start taking distributions out of IRAs or retirement accounts. But then we can control our tax bracket. And depending on where our spending's at, we can do what's called Roth conversions. It's getting money out of tax jail, the pre-tax side of the world, when we're in lower brackets. So again, as our income is changing a little bit each year, it's good to pay attention to brackets. Okay. Mistake number 5 is not making time to work on estate issues. Okay. Death and taxes, right? I mean, you can't avoid either of them. So we got to work on making time for estate issues, right? Because estate planning, it's more than just having a will. Most people, I think, right? I think I saw a statistic that only 40% of people have a will. There's a lot of people who don't even have a will. But when we do have a will, it's like, okay, I'm good. Well, no, there's more to it than just a will. What about having a power of attorney, right? When you get to a point in the future, hopefully a lot longer in your retirement, right? Where maybe you need to have a power of attorney to help make financial decisions, right? Or have that as a backup plan. Reviewing your beneficiaries, right? Making sure they're correct as you make changes in your account, and maybe as you move assets from different places. But, a lot of times, our beneficiaries change as, maybe our family situation, marital status changes, right? Or maybe as our adult kids marital status changes, right? How do we want that to look? And so looking at beneficiaries, understanding what TOD and POD, transfer on death and payable on death, one and the same. When we look at assets that don't have beneficiaries, like just a brokerage account, or individual stocks or individual bonds, or a checking account or a savings account, those don't have beneficiaries on them. You need to add that. You can add what's called a TOD, or transfer on death, to add beneficiaries to those non-designated type of accounts. So paying attention to what type of assets they are too, as far as inheritance, looking at taxes as well. How do we use our pre-tax dollars to give to charity more tax efficiently? And maybe our after-tax Roth or taxable accounts, leaving those to the next generation because they're more tax efficient. But just again, understanding how our assets may pass to the next generation, because you've spent a lifetime of accumulating your assets. Now, estate planning is a way to direct those assets when you're not here, to provide for those people and organizations that you care about. What if you are a beneficiary of an IRA? What if where you're at is you're on the receiving end of maybe your aging parents have passed, and you're receiving some things from their estate, right? How does that maybe impact your financial future and your plan? What are the tax implications around that, right? Again, if they have an IRA or taxable assets coming to you, how's that going to impact your tax situation? So, looking into estate planning, not only from your own situation, but also maybe potential inheritance coming as well. How's that impact things? Also, from an estate planning perspective too, we need to look at protecting our estate possibly as well. If we've built a sizable estate wealth, then how do we protect that for our spouse and or the next generation? Because one of the risks that pretty much everybody has, right, is one, living a long time, but also a long-term care stay, right, can be very, very expensive. I'm working with some clients right now that one of them is going to a memory care, and it's $400 a day. It's $400 a day. That's $12,000 a month for memory care, Alzheimer's, right? They have some long-term care that'll cover a big part of that, but not indefinitely, right? So again, we've got to look at long-term care planning and how do we, protect some of our assets for our spouse, or maybe in the Midwest here in Iowa, a lot of people have family farms, right? How do we protect a family asset that we want to make sure goes to the next generation, or maybe a family business, or again, maybe an asset portfolio. We want to make sure we're leaving X amount or a particular asset to the next generation. We need to put something in place like a long-term care insurance type of system in place to help protect those assets. So long-term care planning is absolutely something we need to plan for. It's a mistake a lot of people don't do, is understanding how do we pay for our healthcare costs in the future. Should that be something that we need to look at? And mistake number 6, the final mistake, not that there's only 6, there's 6 main ones, right? Sometimes people create more mistakes than that, but there's 6 main ones that we're covering today when we look at retirement planning. It is because retirement, it's really a journey. It's not a destination. It's not like, okay, great, I made it to retirement, I'm done. At 65, I got to retirement, finish the race. No, that's hopefully just when the second, the next chapter in your life, right? The next act in your life starts. Should be an exciting time to move into retirement. But are you psychologically prepared for retirement? Financial planning and the numbers and the forecasting and projecting, that can all help, absolutely help you clearly understand when you can retire from a financial perspective, but it doesn't tell you not necessarily when you should retire, right? There's a whole psychological piece of going into retirement. What will your new identity look like, right? What do you want it to look like? And a lot of people, it's not definitive, right? Sometimes it's just, I don't know, I want to try a handful of new things. Awesome. But it's one of the biggest, again, life decisions that we're going to make. And it could be potentially 30 years of vacation, so to speak, right? Not having to work. The most successful people I've seen doing retirement are the ones that are retiring to something, right? Work is getting in their way, right? They're 40 hours a week. They don't have time for that. They've got all these other things they're ready to go do, but they've also accumulated enough assets to do that, right? It's much better to retire to something than retiring away from a situation you just don't like, right? Or just retiring away from something, better retire to something. But again, what do you want it to look like? Spend time building your social network of non-work friends. A lot of our network, our social interactions happen at work, right? So make time to build that non-work social network as well. A lot of longevity studies out there. It's tied to social life. It's tied to people's social life. A lot of studies that I've seen say that's more important than a lot of your physical health type of things, of having a social life and having a purpose, having a purpose every day, right? A goal every day, something you wake up and get excited for, right? So, but again, that's the psychological part of retirement that you got to spend some time thinking about as well. Again, we covered a lot of stuff today. A lot of you may be overwhelmed now, right? Or a little anxious about all this, or maybe you were before all this, and that's not uncommon. 77% of people feel anxious about their current financial situation. They're stressed out, right? You've got to, you are where you are right now, and you've got a goal to be in a different place at some point in the future. And that can cause some anxiety and some stress, right? We've got to bring some clarity and confidence to your financial situation. That's what financial planning does. It's really no coincidence that 2/3 of Americans, 65% of people, feel challenged and not control not in control when it comes to their finances, right? It's because only about a third of people, right, have actually done a financial plan, right? They have a documented plan. They have an actionable plan that they're engaging in, right? It's no surprise to me, again, I do this all the time, right? That those who are engaging and done planning, 92% of people feel confident they're going to meet their goal because they know where they're going. They have clarity. They know where they're headed, right? So again, it's no surprise but that's why people are stressed. That's why people are worried about finance, because they haven't done planning. All right. So that's an easy solution. But there's barriers, right? People perceive barriers when it comes to financial planning. A lot of people think that, well, I don't have enough money that necessitates a plan. And the other big one is that they think it's too complicated, right, to create a plan. And those are two big barriers, right? But I would argue that how are you ever going to accumulate money to have money if you don't have a plan, right? It's never too early to start planning, but it's also not too late to start. You just got to put a plan in place to get there. There's a lot of complexities, absolutely, to financial planning. That's why the majority of people benefit from having somebody help them with that. Because unless finances is something you do every day for a living, personal finance, you're not expected to know everything about it, right? Just like, somebody's physical health, right? I go to a doctor. I know there's certain things about my physical health that eat right and exercise I know I need to do, but when there's something I don't know, I go to a doctor, I go to a specialist, because when the stakes are high, I want to go to somebody who knows what they're doing, right? Finances are no different. When the stakes are high, you need to find somebody that can help you. Okay. A lot of people think that it's expensive. It's too expensive to do. And there are firms out there that charge a lot to do a big, gigantic, comprehensive plan that covers everything under the sun. Well, people don't need all that today, right? People need a plan that gives them clarity of what's in front of them and points them in the right direction for the future, so they have more clarity and confidence. That doesn't take thousands of dollars to create a plan like that. Okay. I'd also argue, though, on the other side of it, it's actually too expensive not to have a financial plan, because those without an active plan very well are likely wasting valuable time, right, and valuable resources, not pointing in the direction of their goals. So a financial roadmap, right, is something that we can help with. Okay. If you're somebody that, if you don't clearly have a path to where you're currently going, if you don't know clearly where you're pointing in your financial life towards retirement, or what retirement's going to look like, or wherever you're at in your financial life, if you're not sure where you're at, if there's questions that you have about putting a plan together, a roadmap can absolutely put together a financial roadmap and financial plan can absolutely bring clarity and confidence to your financial future. We'll talk about any questions that you have. We'll discuss goals. We'll identify opportunities, help you get organized in your financial life, and help you identify the strategies that are available to you in your specific situation. And also, really, it's basically just kind of helping you, coach you up to wherever you're at right now, coach you up that next level in your life, and give you a plan and point you in the right direction. Iowa State Association of Counties has already pre-negotiated a discounted hourly rate to help with doing planning as well. 50% discount. Typically, we bill about $200 an hour. So the 50% discount is $100 an hour for planning. Most typical plans run between 2 to 4 hours. Again, everybody's situation is different, okay? But that can absolutely help for people that just want some more clarity on where they're going, okay? One of the biggest things that barriers in people's life, no matter where you're at, it's procrastination, right? Not just our finances, but lots of other aspects of our life too, right? Procrastination is one of the biggest challenges that we have, especially in finances. The number one way to beat procrastination is to take action, right? Is to do something, put something on your calendar now, right? Today, whether it be, signing up today to connect with us to help with a conversation, or just putting something on the calendar. It's like, hey, you're gonna dig into my look at where I've been spending money, right? Or log into my retirement account and figure out how I'm allocated. Start putting something on your calendar to start bringing some clarity in your confidence in your financial life. Part of the program today, there's a 30-minute conversation. There's no fee for that. There's no, it's just us being able to be a resource for you folks, right? To help discuss some goals, questions, help point you in the right direction for resources and help you to figure what action steps you should be taking. And that conversation, you can easily just use that QR code to add yourself to a calendar, to have a phone call or a virtual conversation. Happy to do that. And again, just have a conversation and answer your specific questions and point you in the right direction. There's no fee for that. After our conversation, if you feel, there'd be some value in preparing a financial roadmap, we can help you with that. And we can, again, discuss what that might look for your specific situation. Okay. But we can definitely talk about what you should be doing at this stage in your life. Everybody's at a different stage and there's different things to be doing at different stages in our life, right? But that's absolutely something we can help with, because again, like death and taxes, right? You can't avoid it. Personal finances, it's not something you can avoid. You can't avoid dealing with money, right? You either do it well or you do it poorly. That's our options, right? You can't avoid it. Or if you have avoided it, you're doing it poorly, right? So it's either you do it well or you do it poorly. So why not reach out to somebody for some assistance and helping you do it well, right? Got some time for some questions and answers. Again, happy to make myself available as a resource. Feel free to call or email or schedule a free consultation, just a phone call or a virtual, just to answer your specific questions or chat a little bit. But happy to be available now. If anybody wants to throw anything in the chat, we can address those questions, or take yourself off mute too, and we can talk about any questions that people had about today's, either anything we covered already today, or even anything that maybe you hope that was going to be talked about today, but wasn't in the programming. Happy to answer those questions today too. So. Anybody has any questions, just fire away on that. The only foolish question, right, is the one that we don't ask, right? That's the only dumb question, is the one we don't ask. So again, everybody has questions in their life. It's and likely your question probably is the same question somebody else has. So you're actually helping out others when you ask your question, because they likely have the same questions too. So again, happy to ask. Who has the first question? Anybody have a question we can talk about today? Of course, nobody wants to ask the first question, so we can just jump to the second question. Anybody have a second question? Well, and that's okay. Right. A lot of times in a group environment, a lot of times people, the questions are a little more personal, right? That's completely fine, That if your question is more personal and confidential, don't feel comfortable asking in front of a group, completely fine. Again, but feel free to reach out, and happy to answer your questions confidentially as well. So.
All right. Thank you, Scott.
You bet.
Today's webinar was recorded and it will be posted along with the slides to the ISAC website probably next week or the week after, if you want to refer back to it. And I'm sure Scott can always be reached at his email address listed there on the screen.
Yep, absolutely.
So if no one else has questions, we will go ahead and end today. All right. Thank you for your time, Scott.
You bet. My pleasure. And everybody have a great summer. And again, happy to be a resource. So take care.
Thank you.